So this is the second installment of the lecture on radio. I know this is going on kind of long, so some 2 installments. I think the last time we were together, what were we looking at? We were looking at Elvis, weren't we? Oh, please, this bloody thing. Radio saved, video killed the radio star, right? And we talked about this, and we talked about Elvis, and you guys looked at Jailhouse Rock, which I hope you agree is pretty amazing. So, music, rock music, popular music, helped save radio. Video killed it, but something came in at the last minute with some salvation. Something else that saved radio is automobiles, which after World War II came into more and more use. This is a more recent piece of data, but it just makes the point that it's kind of hard to watch television in your car, even today. If you're driving, if you're not driving, sure, go for it. But when you're driving, kind of tough. But radio, not a problem. 54% of radio listeners only listen in the car. So, and it varies by age. Younger, even more likely to listen to radio only in the car. So, obviously, Detroit added radios to cars, just as they've added Bluetooth and other things more recently. This just demonstrates, this is only from 1970 to projected to 2020, but this shows estimated vehicle miles traveled on all roads in the U.S. This is of January 2000. Well, looks like November 2018. It's in trillions of miles. And you'll see it goes up pretty dramatically. So more cars, more roads, more driving, and more people listening to radio. However, just as with our discussion of the power grid and the negative impact of the power grid ultimately in terms of our environment, I think we can say the same thing about cars, automobiles, can't we? So, helped radio, but it has not had a good effect on our environment, these gasoline-powered cars. And something else that saved radio we've talked about before is the invention of the transistor. First one possible, 1947. And transistor radio became, as you can see, the most popular communication device, electronic communication device in history, with billions manufactured in the 60s and 70s. So you could take your music with you, and this is especially popular for younger folks. And I even told you that when I was a kid in St. Louis, had my transistor radio, and I would, when I was sent off to bed, I would play popular music on KXOK with Johnny Rabbit. I'd listen to my Beatles and my Byrds and my Rolling Stones and all the other things in the top 40 songs, because all these stations now have really switched to a music format with a DJ, they call him, a disc jockey, doing patter and talk in between songs, maybe a little weather and this and that, a little traffic, and then introducing the songs and maybe having a joke or two or a skit or two if they were really good. And there we go. And so, speaking of music and rock and roll and the radio, I just want to talk a little bit more about that and show some of this play some of this disc jockey content, just a few samples over the years. First of all, this guy Alan Freed is a pretty famous disc jockey. He's given credit for inventing the term rock and roll. That's Alan Freed on the left. I don't know all these guys here, except I do know that the guy on the right is Buddy Holly. The guy with the glasses on the far right is Buddy Holly. And I know that the other two were also, early rock and roll stars, talking there to Alan Freed. And now we're going to take a little break here, and I'm going to play 2 or 3 disc jockeys kind of through the years. You're going to listen to KXOK, the Johnny Rabbit Show. You see this little ears over the microphone. In St. Louis, this I think is from the 60s. It's a long segment, and I would just suggest, again, as I said, maybe at the beginning of this whole thing, you listen to maybe 10 minutes of it. And that should be the case with all of these. The next one is Wolfman Jack, who was all across the country famous, if not internationally famous, disc jockey with his incredible kind of low voice like this, as you'll see, the beard. And you're going to hear some of his patter on the radio. And I just want to mention also, although I'm not going to include a link to it, there's a film that will give you a fantastic flavor of what it was like to be a teenager driving around in a car with other teenagers driving around with cars late at night in the summer, listening to the radio on your car and, linking up with people and having adventures and everything else. And the movie is called American Graffiti. It came out, I want to say, like 1974. I think it was. It's the first major film directed by George Lucas, who you may know went on to do Star Wars. In fact, it has Harrison Ford in one of his first major parts. He was a carpenter around Hollywood before that. Plays a pretty cool hot rod guy in this film. Richard Dreyfuss, who went on to star in a couple of Steven Spielberg films you may have heard of, like Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then many other things. He plays the lead in this. And Wolfman Jack is also part of this film. Suzanne Summers, you probably never heard of, although she's done a lot of exercise videos. Maybe you know her from those. She was a star of a TV show called Three's Company that was very fun, popular, I should say. Was it the 80s? Oh my God. She's in this, but only briefly as kind of the mystery woman. Anyway, if you have time to watch the whole film, it's a wonderful film, American Graffiti, Wolfman Jack. And then the third DJ I'm going to play gets us a little more into present times, and this is Howard Stern when he was on local radio here in New York. And he started as like a music DJ, playing records and patter in between, and got pretty bored with that. And he started at one point just kind of talking about his life and about everything else. And then he got some terrific people in to his kind of crew to bounce things off of and to have fun with. And you'll hear one of his early radio shows. And again, listen to as much of it as you want, but I at least try to do 10 minutes so you really get a flavor of it. And I'll see you guys on the other side.